What is up, everybody? Happy Thursday to you all. Shortly before the kickoff of Thursday Night Football, if you are joining us live, I'm Anthony Cosenza, joined as always by my partner in crime, John Sheeran. We've got a special guest to help preview what is looking like a must-win game, really kind of maybe for both teams. I haven't had a real close look at the schedule for the Rams in the weeks ahead, but you would think where they're standing and how their first 2 weeks have played out, and especially with how the first 2 weeks have played out for the Cincinnati Bengals, that it's kind of getting must-win type of time right now. John, what's going on, my friend?
This is covering the NFL in a nutshell when news breaks right before the show and you're rushing out to get an article out there, because Thursdays on Monday night are very busy, and we're going to talk about all this in the coming minutes here. So I'm excited.
Do we want to start with the breaking news, or do we want to bring in the guest first? I mean, we've kept them waiting already, but I mean,
we have kept them waiting. Let's bring them on.
Okay. All right. Okay. We have this really cool synergy, partnership, whatever you want to call it, whatever the best term is, with the BLEAV network, BLEAV. We've had a lot of different guests to come. You know, we love bringing on the SB Nation folks. We love bringing on a lot of people that we have affiliations with within Vox Media and SB Nation. But the good news is this particular guest, he has affiliations with both SB Nation and the BLEAV network. He is the co-host of the Believe in Rams podcast with working with Cam Rogers, our buddy there, and doing some great work there. And then of course he is a contributor over at Turf Show Times, which is the SB Nation Rams site. And we are going to welcome him in, Mr. Jake Ellenbogen. We've kept you waiting, good sir. I appreciate you hopping on, making time. Like I said before, we made you wait, and then we made you wait to even get the invitation, and you accepted it last minute. But we appreciate it, sir. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine, guys. Don't worry. I've dealt with everything, so we're good over here. I appreciate you guys having me. John, we met at the Senior Bowl. You're a great guy, so it's nice to get on a show with you as well. But really appreciate you guys reaching out.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, we've had this really cool partnership with the BLEAV network, and we'll talk more about your show, your multitude of shows. You are a man of many talents, and it shows from your Twitter following, getting close to 20,000 Twitter followers there.
Appreciate it.
There. Stoked for you. It's a testament to your work, my friend. But let's kind of start. I like starting here for the most part, and that is just pretty basic. What's the status of the Rams' health? I know, obviously, big move this week on their end. Cam Akers no longer on the team. He got shipped off to Minnesota. So what's the health status and just kind of overall status with the team heading into this Monday night matchup?
Yeah, so obviously everyone knows Cooper Kupp is not going to play. He is on the IR. So in case, you've been living under a rock, Cooper Kupp is out until at least week 5. So he will not be suiting up. So then you look, across the board. They put a safety on IR who they drafted, Jason Taylor II. That's not really somebody that was probably going to have an impact in this game. The guy that I'm most concerned about looking at so forth is Joseph Noteboom, who was going into last week the right guard for the Los Angeles Rams, playing at a high level. He did get a shoulder bruise, deep shoulder bruise, that they pretty much are calling a contusion in that game against the 49ers. He left in the middle of the game, middle of the third quarter. In came 7th round pick Tremaine Ankrum out of Clemson. And Ankrum is a good player. He's not quite boom athletically. So the hope is that he's going to be good to go this week, and none of the injuries, none of the banged up, so to speak, is going to affect any sort of, playing time this Monday. I think the one guy to also look out is Puka Nacua. Okay, he was dealing with an oblique injury, and while he's been on an absolute tear, he was definitely feeling it at the end of that 49ers game. So that's all I got for you in regards to injuries. You mentioned Cam Akers. It's addition by subtraction. He's not a fit anymore. They move on, and now they can bring in the next era of, that running back room, which starts with 5th round, second-year man out of Notre Dame, Kyron Williams.
You mentioned his name. I don't think there's anything more that I need to ask you aside from just Puka Nacua. Like, just that's the question. Like, I want all your thoughts on him, because there's a lot to say here.
Well, Puka Nacua is just going to get open no matter what, right? He's unbelievable in this offense. Yeah, he was. And here's the thing. Was he this good coming out of BYU? I don't know. But I can tell you right now what he's done this offseason to get ready to be in this position. And the stuff I hear, the stories I hear about how, it was Stafford, it was Cooper Kupp. This was Jordan Rodriguez, The Athletic, reporting this, called the Breakfast Club. Every morning, like, they would have breakfast together. They'd go over things, so forth. Well, one day, the rookie, the 5th round rookie, by the way, the Rams drafted, he was the 4th 5th round pick that they had. So 4 of 4. And he wants to sit down with them and talk shop. And, he started from that point on really just shadowing Cooper Kupp, trying to learn everything about his game and apply it to his own game. And so it's been a sight to see. And I think, a lot of the fun thing about this, and it's actually a silver lining, you never want to see guys get hurt, but the best thing right now, and how I'm looking at it, is you have Cooper Kupp, who just wasn't ready to play. I mean, we've seen, there's questions about Joe Burrow's calf, like, should he have sat out the beginning of the season? Like, who knows, right? But with Cooper Kupp, I can tell you with that hamstring, 100% should not have played. And I like the way the Rams are going about this slowly. Put him on the IR. He can come back week 5 against Philly. And what that's done is it's opened the door for guys like Tutu Atwell, the 2021 second-round pick out of Louisville, to all of a sudden start to emerge. And Puka Nacua, the rookie out of the 5th round. And it's been a sight to see. But yeah, Puka is just somebody, he finds the soft spot in the zone. He's a good route runner, has some decent speed. He can get over the top. He did that against Seattle, and, Stafford missed him by an eyelash. Could have had another 40 yards in that game. And then, you see what he did nursing an oblique injury. The 49ers couldn't stop him, to be honest with you. I think the only thing is, it seems a little weird workload for a wide receiver. You think about workload running back in the touches and all that, but that's been the name of the game. Nacua takes a lot of hits over the middle of the field, and so they're going to have to manage his workload, I think, very soon, because they're pushing the limit here. You're talking 35 touches or 35 targets in the first 2 games.
Anything else? We can't hear you, man.
Talking with Jake Ellenbogen, host of the BLEAV in Rams podcast, as well as a contributor over at Turf Show Times, the SB Nation Rams website. Happy to be chatting with him. Look, there are 2 mega stars on each side of the ball that are potentially winding down in their careers. One definitely Hall of Fame, one probably Hall of Fame, and that is, of course, Matthew Stafford and Aaron Donald. I'm particularly interested in how fans or observers, those who cover the team, feel about Matthew Stafford and what they've seen over the sample size of 22 and 23. I think I had counted 11 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, something to that effect, so including through the first two games this year. And I don't know. I guess, has it been better than what we've been seeing these first 2 weeks, at least from a macro perspective, just looking at the stat lines?
Yeah, Matthew Stafford, really unfortunate this past game. He's balling out. Like, he looks like Matthew Stafford of old. You can't tell because you look, first off, they scored on the last 8 drives coming from the Seattle game and moving on into San Francisco before the second half. So they were killing it, right? Unfortunately for Stafford, with those numbers, and not everybody gets a chance to see, the full Rams games, what is important to realize here is Kyren Williams comes away with 2 rushing touchdowns in that game, week 1. Then you have Cam Akers, with a rushing touchdown. That's 3 touchdowns that did not go to Matthew Stafford. He does not throw for a touchdown. He throws for over 330 yards against what, honestly, I thought Seattle coming in was a pretty solid defense. And then against the 49ers, he's putting up some numbers. He's looking good. And then unfortunately, he doesn't get a touchdown. Once again, you talk about Kyren Williams getting a rushing touchdown, and then he has a passing touchdown to Kyren. And then unfortunately, the interception goes right off Kyren's hands into a defender. And then the second interception is a timing route in which, unfortunately, Dan Jefferson just takes way too much. He gets way too much depth in his route, and it does allow the defensive back to kind of come up and jump the route and pick it off. So neither of the 2 interceptions, I know it sounds crazy, but neither of the 2 interceptions were really Stafford's fault. I thought Mark Sanchez on the broadcast did an excellent job of explaining that. So right now, what do you come away with? Well, Stafford has, a 70-something passer rating because, he has now 2 interceptions, only 1 touchdown. But this is where numbers can be deceiving. And I think Stafford's looked like one of the best quarterbacks in football. I think when you look at the way, Kirk Cousins, Tua Tagovailoa, guys like that have played, Stafford's right up there this year. That's the, kind of a disappointing, upsetting part about this past game with the 49ers is those 2 interceptions, they go in the book just like any other. But in reality, neither of them were Stafford's fault.
I like how you mentioned context in regard to interceptions, because I think context kind of matters with this Rams running game. Because on the surface, Williams is averaging like 3.6 yards per carry, like Akers is averaging 1.3 yards per carry. But also the Rams are top 10 in both rush EPA per play and rush success rate. And I noticed that maybe this is just ignorance on my part, because I've always kind of associated a Sean McVay offense with a lot of zone and wide zone specifically. A lot of the runs, according to PFF, have been charted as gap style runs. So kind of talk about like what this Rams running game is, maybe how it's better than what the stats kind of indicated to be.
Yeah, no, that's great. Here's the thing, John. They did go with more of a gap scheme this year, which is why I think they kind of didn't really have a use for Akers anymore. Other reasons, but we'll leave that. But Kyren does everything, right? He pass protects. He goes out for, to catch passes out of the backfield, whether it's on a wheel route, leaking out in a slip screen, or you're talking about a guy that can line up in the slot and be a legitimate receiver. He does everything. And obviously he can run the ball. So he had 53 snaps. Akers has 28 in the first game. Those 53, Kyren's doing it all. So it's not really giving a tell to the defense, whereas Akers is coming in, those 28 snaps, 21 of those are carries. So now what you'll see is 8-9 guys in the box. Seattle doesn't trust Akers at all to be a threat out of the backfield as a pass catcher. And I mean, they're just licking their chops when he's in pass pro. So that's the thing, is now you have Kyren, and so they really feel like they're able to actually run their offense to the fullest. And that's the thing. Sean McVay talked to him on Friday and was like, look, this isn't really going to be a fit moving forward, with Cam. And again, there are other things there. He wanted more of a workload, and I think maybe he thought he was going to be a fit. Sean McVay, it took him one game to realize he's not a fit. Kyren is. And so what they're doing is, yes, those gap schemes, blocking down the line of scrimmage, creating those opportunities. But exactly to your point, context is needed. The 3.6 yards per carry average shouldn't be penalized against somebody like Kyren, because what Kyren is doing is actually really impressive when you think about it. Seattle did not respect the Rams passing attack. They saw Cooper Kupp was out, and they basically are like, all right, we're just going to load the box, and, they're probably just going to run with Cam Akers the entire time. And sure enough, Kyren comes away with 2 rushing touchdowns and looked pretty good. Yards after contact, he had about 3.5, and Akers had like 2.6. So this guy's already shown you the ability to shake some tackles. He did it at Notre Dame. And so I think, with that 3.6 yards per carry average, it stems for the fact, one, Seattle sold out to stop the run. I think they're underrated against the run. Thought they did a decent job against the Lions, bottling them up. And then you look at the 49ers, and it's hard to run against the 49ers. So those are two tough matchups. And, with all due respect to the Cincinnati Bengals here, who have now given up close to 200 yards in back-to-back games on the ground, albeit, running quarterbacks, I think this is a good opportunity for Kyren to get going and have that 100-yard rushing game that everyone wants him to have in the Rams, fan base. Because I think until you get that, you're not going to get the respect. And to your point with the 3.6 yards per carry, people are just seeing him as just a guy with that 50-something yards back-to-back weeks. And so I think the thing with Kyren is you got to look at him for what he is. I mean, he's kind of the do-it-all guy. And yes, he's not 6'1" Todd Gurley. That guy's not walking through the door, right? I think, the hope is guys like Austin Eckler, who have come in and kind of changed people's perspectives again about the size of the running back. I'm hoping that comes to be the case with Kyren, because he's a really good running back. I mean, there's a reason why he's out there. They trust him. Matthew Stafford's already throwing to him quite a bit. He had 6 catches in this past game. So I think it's really important, to your point, the context is needed. 3.6 yards per carry, we could look at that and say that's bad. But I think he's got a really good chance against this Bengals team to actually bump that yards per carry average up.
Bengals lost a couple of big-time free agents this year in one position group alone, and that is the safety position. They did sign a former Rams player in Nick Scott. We had some questions about him in some of our live chats here. I guess from a Rams perspective, there's been some good and there's been some so far with him starting for the Cincinnati Bengals through 2 games. What I don't know. What should our expectations be about Nick Scott? And, is he going to be someone that can do a lot of the things that the Bengals veteran safeties did for them for a handful of years?
Well, I will just say this in the nicest way possible, because I love Nick Scott, but don't watch the Falcons, okay? Jesse Bates is absolutely balling in Atlanta. He's not going to be Jesse Bates, but Nick Scott was a 7th-round pick out of Penn State who was drafted to be a special teamer. He worked his way up. He worked his tail off, and he developed into a starter. He was really good down the stretch in that Super Bowl season, and he became a fan favorite when Jordan Fuller broke his leg. However, the problem is the next year, we kind of saw a fan favorite, yes, but when you have those fans, you haven't even analysts, myself included, try to kind of elevate him maybe quicker than he's elevating himself. I think he got a little overrated, if you ask me. Still really like the guy. I think the thing that really stands out to me is his athleticism. You're talking about that range. He's a guy that, it's going to come throughout the year. He's going to make a huge play in the secondary, and it might come in this game, but he can jump routes. He can cover a lot of ground, but I also love his ability as a tackler and, how he can, really lay the wood. His nickname with the Rams was Brick Scott. And it was the reason for that is because he absolutely decked Deebo Samuel in the NFC title game. One of the hardest hits I've ever seen. And so I think when you're getting that kind of combination, he adds a little bit to what you already have there in the back end. I know you drafted Jordan Battle in the 3rd round, and of course you have Dax Hill. I wouldn't say he's necessarily better than either of those guys. I think what you're getting with Scott is a solid player, but you got to temper expectations if you're expecting him to be anything, like Jesse Bates, who just left.
Yeah, and that was more or less the expectation, considering you signed for $4 million per year with maybe a handful guaranteed. There's been some low lights with Scott so far, and I think it's fair to kind of evaluate him probably at season's end when we get a full season with him. Going to the Rams defense now, specifically with the defensive line, because that was a huge story for the Super Bowl 2 years ago when they had Von Miller and Aaron Donald was playing at his best. Aaron Donald's still there. I don't think a lot of Bengals fans can recognize a lot of the other defensive linemen. So if you want to give us a quick rundown, the defensive tackles, their edge rushers, what's the state of the Rams defensive line, especially going up against a Bengals offensive line that's still it's improved, but it's still kind of vulnerable to some obviously elite talents like Aaron Donald himself.
Yeah, no, this is a young defensive line, no doubt about it. Young edge defenders. You're talking about probably the least experienced room in all of football. All positions in the NFL is that edge room for the Rams. You got Byron Young, who's played in 2 games. You got Michael Hoyt, who's a 310, 6'4" outside linebacker, and he's second in the league in outside linebacker coverage snaps. So think about that, okay? So you got that going on. Then you got Nick Hampton, who I liked coming out of App State, 5th rounder. He's had 1 snap. And then you got Zach Van Valkenburg, who, I mean, by the grace of God, he made this roster very, very close. Some good stuff we saw in preseason, but this is not a great unit. This is not very proven of a unit. And so that's the first thing. But I do think that we saw some strides from them, to be fair, against that 49ers team, which, I mean, hey, they got a good offensive line outside, of course, the right tackle that's a little questionable there. So then you look at the defensive line, and obviously Aaron Donald sets the tone. What I've been really impressed with, 2 guys. I want to send Bobby Brown, I want to give him his props. He's looked decent. But 2 guys I've been really impressed with, UDFA Jonah Williams, he just played his best game. Don't just ask me, ask Sean McVay. He'd tell you the same thing. He just played his best game as a Ram against the 49ers, did a great job. And he's really athletic too. Like the bubble screen, there was a couple of them to Deebo Samuel. He's getting out there and defending that from the interior. So really impressive stuff there. And then the 3rd round pick that I thought was a little bit of a reach, Kobe Turner. Okay. Kobe Turner is starting to really emerge for the Rams. I saw it on tape. I just finished the All-22 for the Rams and 49ers last night, and it really stuck out to me. This guy is starting to get through. He's starting to win. He has a true, like a pass rush plan up the gut. He can play the nose. He could play, next to the nose. He could play next to Donald. They do use Donald a little bit on the edge as well. He got a couple of those rushes on Purdy. But I think the thing here is that the 49ers get rid of the ball like immediately. That was really their thing. So to see the pressure starting to build here with these young guys getting through, it was impressive. And I do have to mention their 5th round pick from a couple years ago out of Northwestern, Ernest Brown the 4th. I thought he looked pretty solid. So they have some guys. I think really just the name of the game with the Rams, and this is why I've been high on them all off season, is that they have talent. It's just not household talent. So it's going to surprise some people. And if you're reading too much into like what the mainstream's saying about how this team is going to tank for Caleb Williams, then they're really going to surprise you, because I think this team has playoffs written all over them.
Just real quick, Anthony, just real quick. I have to ask Jake this. 10 snaps, 10 reps, Jonah Williams versus Jonah Williams. Which Jonah Williams wins?
I'm going to go with Jonah Williams, but I'm not going to tell you which one. No, I'm going to go with the Rams, Jonah Williams, man. I love the way he's playing. And, the thing I love about watching Jonah Williams and Michael Hoyt, the 6'4", 310-pound outside linebacker that just defies the laws of everything, is that these are UDFAs that people have counted out. It's just a reminder that, okay, like the Rams have drafted guys. Talk about Cam Akers. They just traded him for a pick swap in 2026. And Jonah Williams, Cam Akers was drafted in the 2nd round, and Jonah Williams, UDFA, no one thought was going to make the roster. Now here he is in year 3, I believe. So it is cool to see that. But yeah, I think he's kind of been the guy. You have Ashawn Robinson there, Greg Gaines, Aaron Donald, a lot of guys in front of him. And now they let Greg Gaines go kind of mysteriously, very, very cheap to the Buccaneers. Same thing, Ashawn Robinson goes to the Giants. They might have known something that we didn't. And I think that these young guys are cooking right now. And it is a surprise because I thought, they got this guy, UDFA out of Cincinnati. He had an interception in the first playoff game in that Super Bowl run against the Cardinals. It was Marquise Copeland, and he didn't even make the team. I was surprised by that. So they have a lot of depth in that interior defensive line, and it's a testament to, obviously, I think Raheem Morris does a great job as a defensive coordinator, and you can see what he's getting out of these kids because no one bought into this defense. It was clearly everyone thought this defense was going to be terrible. But then, Eric Henderson, defensive line coach, he's just done an outstanding job. I think the only thing I would hold against the Rams is that they let John Franklin Myers go for nothing, but that's about it.
So we talked about fun side note, by the way, on the Jonah Williams thing that we're talking about. In the newest Madden, there's a profile picture of the Bengals, Jonah Williams, and his profile picture, I believe, is of the Rams player, Jonah Williams. So it's not the first time. Yeah, it's not the first time that confusion has been had. And I think also, if I'm not mistaken, Eric Henderson, who you mentioned, was he with the Bengals at one point? I think.
I know he was with the Chargers, as a player, but he might have been. 06
through 08. Yeah. So interesting connection to bring up there.
That's interesting.
With Bengals and Rams. Yeah. Well, look, we talked Nacua, we've talked Stafford, we've got, and then you also on the defensive side, you talked about the Niners getting the ball out quickly, and that's some of what Burrow and the Bengals have tried to do, and what they've adjusted to from last year and into the beginning of this year. So I guess if you're McVay and company, I know it's kind of a broad question, but what's your best plan of attack this week? Is it run heavy because of the rush yards allowed by the Cincinnati defense, and how would you negate things on offense if you're the Rams brain trust?
I'm going with the same thing I did against Seattle. I mean, you had 38 passes, you had 40 carries. I'm trying to balance out this offense. I'm trying to run my offense. I'm not going to let them dictate what I do. The 49ers got off to a lead in that late third, early fourth quarter, and it changed the game. They couldn't run the ball anymore. Now they're throwing it. Now Noteboom gets hurt at right guard, so you have a sub there. They can't do what they want to do because they were double teaming Javon Hargrave. Now they can't. He's not athletic enough to get over, double team Hargrave, and then slide back over. So it was a mess. I think really the thing is, and this is why they brought in Mike LaFleur, is that they need to consistently run the ball. Sean McVay has notoriously gotten away from running the ball. I mean, we could talk about the Super Bowl against the Patriots, just abandons the run in a game 0-0 until the fourth quarter. So that's been Sean McVay. That's why they went out, they rebuilt this offense pretty much from the ground up. They've changed some things, like Stafford lost weight. They want to get him more on the run, bootlegs, things like that. So that's the thing, is like Sean McVay has to stick to not just running the ball, but balancing out the offense. And then I think on the defensive side, I mean, I have the Bengals winning the Super Bowl. Okay. And I'm not going off that. I still believe they have what it takes to win the Super Bowl. And I think Joe Burrow, you talk about those guys they got to the Super Bowl and then they lose and then they never go back. I don't think Burrow's one of those guys. Like, I think he's going to win a Super Bowl someday. And so I'm very high on the Bengals. That's why it's weird for me to feel this way. But I feel like following the 49er game, very, very physical, right? Christian McCaffrey, like in your face, smash mouth running back. And then you talk about Deebo Samuel, who's like a running back. Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle. Like, I'm not as worried about the physicality in this game, running after the catch with a Jamar Chase, with a T. Higgins, with Tyler Boyd, with Joe Mixon. And it's not to say they're not great players, because they're all really good. And it's one of the best groups, I would say, in the league offensively. But I think after what the Rams just went up against with the 49ers, if they want to get rid of the ball quickly, I think they're going to have an okay job, just making the tackle. A big issue with them last week, Deebo Samuel was breaking every tackle. They've always had a hard time bringing him down, no matter who was in the Rams defense. So I think that's really the key, is that, the 49ers are okay getting rid of the ball. It keeps Brock Purdy out of harm's way. We know if Joe Burrow has to go down the field, he might not be 100%, but we know the arm talent is there. We know he's capable of it. We don't know what Brock Purdy's capable of. So the way Kyle Shanahan called that game was like, I don't know if I even trust Brock Purdy to win this game. Just dump it off to Deebo, let Deebo cook, let Christian McCaffrey cook. I mean, aside from one throw they made to Jawan Jennings late in that game, just watching the All-22 last night, just about every single play was Christian McCaffrey or Deebo Samuel, and they were not deep down the field, and if they were, Purdy missed them. I'm not just expecting Burrow to just miss guys because he's injured. I still think he's capable of hitting a few passes, being dangerous. He's clutch, and you can't measure that clutch factor. So I don't know what the status is on Burrow. I don't know how that's going to look. But like, if I'm in this game, and the best thing that can happen is Burrow's getting the ball out quickly and dumping the ball off, because I'm pinning my ears back and I'm going to go and get those guys. But instead, if he's testing you deep down the field, that's when it can get concerning, because you talk about Darion Kendrick, who's given up the third fewest yards. but he's been a little penalty happy. Like he got hit with, I think, 2 or 3 penalties last game covering Debo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. So, if I'm the Bengals, I'm targeting Darion Kendrick. I'm making him prove it to me. Can you stop a Jamar Chase? Can you stop a T. Higgins? I'm targeting a Kella Witherspoon, who I think has played well, 10th fewest yards allowed in the NFL for corners. But at the same time, like, can you stop T. Higgins? Can you stop Jamar Chase? And then if that's working, then I'm targeting Kobe Durant, who's been playing the slot this year, and he's a very good player. I think he's off to a slow start. I'm targeting him with Tyler Boyd, and if it's not Tyler Boyd, hell, I'll throw in Chuck Sizzle and I'll see if he can stop him. That's how I see it, because I think the Bengals, and this is why this game is so fascinating to me, is right now the Rams look like they should have no issue winning this game. They look like the far better team coming into this game, but the Bengals are my Super Bowl pick, and it's different, man. They're 1-1. The Rams are 1-1. They got that win out of the way to start the season. They looked really good against the 49ers. Fans came out of that game like I can't believe I'm saying this as well. Like, the 49ers are the arch rival. Everyone hates the 49ers in Rams country. But Rams fans came out of that game feeling like we're ahead of schedule here. Like, this is going to be a fun season, Not like, oh, we lost. Well, the Bengals, like, desperate teams are dangerous. And 0-2, like, you're staring 0-3 in the face, it starts to go away from that storyline. Like, well, when they were 0-2, they went to the Super Bowl. Like, that's great and all, but 0-3, you start to go down like, it's not good territory to be in. So, I mean, this could go either way. It really depends what kind of Bengals team we see, because I have no doubt Sean McVay will have the Rams ready to go.
So I guess, if you want to make 2 predictions here, if you want to make a Burrow playing prediction or a Jake Browning playing prediction, we all know all Super Bowl runs start with Jake Browning, of course, playing the game. So if you want to hedge your bet, but by all means.
I mean, I'll say this: I think Burrow's gonna go, and I don't know, like they might. I don't know how it works with a calf. Do you like heavily tape that thing? Like I don't know. That's the thing that sucks. It's not like an ankle that you can tape up. Like, so I think he's going to go, and I think it's going to be a pretty solid game. I was not impressed with, as great as this defense has looked at times. I think the thing that needs to be explained here, that Seattle game where they only gave up 12 yards and a first down in the second half, because they got off to that lead and they won by 17, it took Kenny Walker out of that game. Kenny Walker was averaging over 5 yards per carry. And then this game, Christian McCaffrey, the explosive 50-plus yard run, like bad football there, right? You take that run away, they held him to 3.6 yards per carry. So that's a good thing, right? But still, the explosives are there. So, I mean, I look at a Joe Mixon, and I'm like, he's done it before. He could do that. He could get out to the second level. And then he's one of the bigger guys at the second level, could break a tackle. They need something like that. And then, in addition to that, I just think, with the Rams, anything could happen. I mean, it's going to be peaks and valleys with this team. The offense, in my opinion, even though they look young, the offense is the experienced part of this group. It's the defense that's, interesting. I'm going to go 31-23 Rams. But I think if Cincinnati wins this game, I don't think it's going to be the Rams played bad. I think it's that, wow, okay, Cincinnati, that Super Bowl team that we thought they could be, that was them on Monday night. I think that's what's going to be the storyline.
Interesting. Jake Ellenbogen of the Believe in Rams podcast. We're going to pull this up and share the link to your show.
Appreciate you guys.
You are a renaissance man, my friend. You do a lot of different projects. I'm looking at your profile here. You stream daily on kick.com. You are the host of the Off the Edge show, NFL show. You are the CEO of Downtown Rams, another account on Twitter /X that has a very solid following. You are the host, as I mentioned, of the Believe in Rams, a writer at Turf Showtime's SB Nation's Rams site. Tell us where you can find this show, along with your co-host, former Rams linebacker Cam Lynch, joining you behind the mic.
Yeah, I'll just say this. First off, really appreciate you guys having me. You can follow me at JKBogan on Twitter, and all of my stuff, to just make it as simple as possible, is going to be in that Linktree bio. Because I got a lot of stuff, and I got so much stuff I don't even think that's in my Linktree bio. So yeah, that's probably good. Or you could Google me, Jake Ellenbogen. Either one works. You will find it. But yeah, no, I appreciate it, guys. I love talking ball, if you can't tell.
We're good at it.
Thank you. This Bengals team, and this is the weird thing, is that there's kind of like this love-hate relationship, because obviously when a team plays a team in a Super Bowl, one team wins, one team loses, that whole thing. And I've only ever respected Bengals fan, because I had the greatest time during that time, like going on Twitter Spaces with people and getting to know the community. And I thought Bengals fans were just awesome, and just the hospitality and everything. Like, it was really nice. And obviously you guys with your hospitality. And it's just, it's weird here, because I'm like, man, this is the team before the season started. Bengals, Lions, that was my Super Bowl. And I had the Bengals winning. And I hate to see where they're at right now, because it's only because of Joe Burrow's ankle, in my opinion. I think the offense so far, what we've seen is his calf. I think it's held back him. It's held back the offense. And I think, unfortunately, what we're seeing is that when an offense struggles like that, it's really taxing on a defense. And it's really hard to evaluate a defense that's on the field the whole game. And that's what I've come away, because I've seen every game of theirs. And I mean, I thought they had a chance to beat the Ravens there. But, just the fact that they made that turnaround, the Browns game was awful. But to make that turnaround in week 2, be in that game, tough division rivalry, Burrow's not 100%. I think they're going in the right direction. And that's why, I think both of these teams are going to be playing, potentially, I don't know how deep for the Rams, but I think both of these teams will be playing in January.
Well, I hope that's the case. And Jake, I am old enough. I don't know if I mentioned it to you, but I am a Southern California native, and I am old enough to remember an iconic game. I didn't get to go to it because I was too little, but my dad and my older brother went to it. It was in the old Anaheim Stadium. Bengals Rams, Jim Everett versus Boomer Esiason, and the guys threw for over 800 yards and 5 touchdowns combined. 34-31. I think it was an overtime game. So if you want to go back, you say you watch a lot of the Rams games. If you want to go back and watch a fun one, my friend, go back in the archives and watch that one.
Oh, see, that sounds awesome. Like, as soon as you said Boomer, and of course my guy Jim Everett, he's been on my show a few times. He's a good dude.
Good dude.
Yeah, those two, I mean, they were like stars at that point. So that doesn't surprise me. 800 plus yards. That'd be fun. I would like to see it. It's not possible with Burrow the way he is, and I know that. But as somebody that enjoyed the hell out of 2018, what I call the real Super Bowl, I'm just kidding, of course, the Monday Night Football 54-51, Patrick Mahomes versus Jared Goff. I'd love to see a Matthew Stafford versus Burrow. There's just no defense in this game. Yeah. They're just going crazy. I'd love to see that. It's not going to happen, but it's a shame, because who knows? It might have happened if Burrow was 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this has been a lot of fun talking with you, and don't be a stranger. I know these teams don't face off very often, but don't be a stranger. We'd love to have you back on. Maybe we're talking Super Bowl rematch here at the end of the year, but good having you on. Give our best to Cam, and hopefully we'll catch up with you soon, Jake.
Sounds like a plan. Appreciate you guys. And oh, by the way, Off the Edge, we cover the Bengals. We cover the NFL. So I'm down to come on anytime.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks, Jake.
Thank you, Jake.
Absolutely. Later.
That was awesome. Wow. I got to tell you, I did not sleep very well last night, John, for a variety of reasons. I think I'm going on 3 or 4 hours of sleep, but Jake got me. Jake and a caffeinated drink here got me kind of my late afternoon re-energized there. I like the knowledge, the passion that he brought. I love when we have someone on for the first time, and sometimes you're like, I don't know what to expect here, and they bring the knowledge. And I know BLEAV always, like yourself, hires great talent.
Yeah, Anthony, when you said you had a Rams guest on, because I don't know a lot of people who cover the Rams, I didn't know you were gonna reach out to the first person I ever met at the Senior Bowl. Yeah, Jake. We hung out a couple times. I think it was like 2018 down there in Mobile when Josh Allen was the Senior Bowl MVP. So yeah, kind of a blast from the past there. It was fun talking to him.
I think that was when you and I were doing, I think, a form of a show, and you were in the hotel room with Goodberry, right? You guys had a.
That was the next year. I don't even think I was on this. I don't think I was on the show when the 2018 Senior Bowl was a thing.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, go check out all the awesome. Dude, I saw his profile and I'm like, man, John and I do a lot of stuff, but that guy he's got like 7 different projects going on here. It's crazy. This is the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast. That interview went a little longer than expected, but it was fantastic. And we'll cover a few more things before we hop on out of here. But in case you are new here, welcome. You can get this show on your favorite audio streamer, whether that's iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, all of the major ones. We are there. If you like the video side of things, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel underneath the Cincy Jungle icon on John's side of the screen there. Click that show icon to subscribe. Click the bell to be notified when we go live, and then give us a thumbs up on all the stuff that you like that we're doing. We keep trying to give you a lot of different stuff, whether it's our shows on the YouTube channel. We also host the 3 and Out podcast, which is part of the Cincy Jungle podcast channel, along with Talking Football with Bengal Jim and Friends, and the coach, Matt Minnick's Coach Speak and Chalk Talk. So go get all of that. Get all your podcast videos, analysis, opinions, news on cincyjungle.com, or where my boy John is writing at A2Z sports.com. He and I appreciate your support of this show and our respective websites. John, speaking of news, my friend, there was some that broke right before we took the air. Odd stuff. And I'm going to let you talk about it. I'm going to give you the honors on this one because it is a little bit of a shocker.
When it rains, it pours, I guess. The Bengals entering today had 2 quarterbacks officially practice for Thursday, and now they will probably only have 1 tomorrow because Will Grier, who was on the practice squad for the Bengals, signed to the New England Patriots active roster. Kind of a shock, obviously, considering, practice squad quarterbacks don't normally get poached so early in the season, but Will Grier obviously had a phenomenal end to his preseason with the Dallas Cowboys. That's why the Bengals ended up signing him to the practice squad. They hope to develop him. The implications here are obvious, though. Joe Burrow did not practice officially on Thursday. He was out on the field with a helmet on. He was doing warm-ups. He was throwing a little bit, but he didn't participate in the actual team portion or everything. He wasn't even limited. Jake Browning is obviously quarterback number 2. He took all the reps with the starters and everything. And Will Grier, I'm assuming, was there. I'm assuming he was doing all the stuff. If Joe Burrow cannot play Monday night, the Bengals only have 1 quarterback on the roster who can, and it's Jake Browning. So are they going to sign another guy to the practice squad and elevate him up to the active roster? Are they going to call up Trevor Siemian, who they cut back in August? Does this impact whether or not Joe Burrow actually plays or is at least active in an emergency situation? None of these things that we know. All we know is the Bengals have another quarterback problem on their hands a few days before a must-win game.
I think it'll be pretty telling what they do. And you and I talked about this last, I think it was on Monday on the Aftermath, where we feel like if a transaction were to be made, or if it was going to be Grier, Browning, they would give the nod potentially to Browning because of familiarity in the system and just that sort of thing. So it will be telling to, do they go on one of the bigger name free agents that are available out there at quarterback because they feel that, man, we got to have someone with a lot of starting experience, potentially some semblance of success in the league because Burrow's not going to play. Or are we going to kind of stay with some of the devils we know? And maybe that's a real short-term situation in terms of someone else starting. And so they're just more comfortable with that aspect. I don't know, but definitely something, a development to watch over the next couple of days. I still maintain at this point, I know it looks kind of bleak. My gut's still telling me Burrow's going to play Sunday or Monday rather. I don't know how confident I am in that, but that's just kind of, if you were to ask me right now, that's where I would place my bet between yes or no, would be yes. But I do think that the correlating move to this loss of Will Grier will say a lot in terms of what's going to be happening over the next couple of games.
I think the issue here is that this is a true day-to-day situation. Like, no decision has been made regarding him playing or sitting Monday night. It is just really just, hey, how are you doing today? Can you practice today? Do you feel good? It's just a constant updating process. And that plays into what the Bengals want to do or can do in terms of just drawing up contingencies. And one of these contingencies obviously would be to have two healthy quarterbacks here. Now, obviously, people are going to be upset that this happened at the worst possible time, right? The Bengals, unfortunately, can't protect any player on the practice squad until they have to do that Saturday, or I guess it would be Sunday. It's like 24 hours before the game or something like that. So the Bengals couldn't really stop this. The only way they could have stopped it is if they had signed Will Grier to the active roster, which again, that was a possibility. But if you're still deciding if you're going to have two quarterbacks active on the active roster playing on Monday night, that is a roster move that you have to unfortunately cut someone that you don't want to release out to the open market for them to sign on to another team, right? So these decisions all have implications. They have ramifications, if you will. And not having anything concrete set in stone in terms of a plan for what you're going to do 3 days down the road, it creates just a lot of possibilities out there. And one of the possibilities, a bad possibility, was Will Grier signing to another team who had a spot open on the active roster. So this, unfortunately, I'm not going to say it was unavoidable, but it was just it's a very, very unfortunate circumstance that they have to now deal with. And when you talk about Burrow, man, I none of us have a good read on the situation. We can only gauge off of the things that they say or don't say. They haven't said a lot about this other than he's sore. Obviously, he's still going through this. He's still getting treatment. And again, it's just still a daily process, and every day could be different. If you want my unprofessional opinion, it's probably a matter of Burrow doing everything in his power to play, and the training staff and the coaches and whoever experts they're leaning on are just playing it with caution and thinking about the long-term ramifications of this. And if it comes down to, hey, it's Sunday night and I feel good enough to play like I did last Sunday, that might be enough to allow him to play. I'm assuming they're going to do something to where they don't have to force him to play because they only have one quarterback. I'm assuming another quarterback is going to re-enter the building before that time.
Right.
But this just unfortunately, it just accelerates the process, and it just creates a bigger necessity that they need to have some type of plan set in stone.
Well, big news, as we said, and the Bengals have a big responding move to make here. And again, I still think who that person is that they bring in will be very telling about what the foreseeable future with Joe Burrow and their plans are with him, be it for just this Monday night or a couple of weeks ahead. But let's talk a little bit, because we're running up against it. Let's talk a little bit about this game on our own here. We talked a ton with Jake Ellenbogen, and he gave us some great insight on the Rams, who they are, what they're about, especially in this 1-1 start for them this year. I was just on Strawberry Ice's show before I came on here, and we talked a little running backs, and I see this comment here from James Wright. I don't know if this is the former Bengals wide receiver, James.
Oh, it might be.
Yeah, that would be kind of interesting. Old LSU James Wright. But his comment here: scheming Chris Evans on linebackers and wide zone runs off tackle from under center, with blocking tight ends in the game, with Browning in the game, plus Mixon has been a beast. More Boyd in the middle also. I mean, I think all of that in theory looks good. The Bengals have not, or sounds good in a way. The Bengals have not, I don't believe, called up Gentry, right? He would have been their blocking blocking tight end. So, that may be a move they look at making in the coming weeks, depending on which way they want to go here. Again, with all of this talk, whether it is Burrow coming in, whether it is Browning getting the start, or maybe a street free agent, depending on who that might be. I mean, again, is this a week? Is this the week to at least kind of partially lean on the run a little bit more than you originally anticipated, or that this normally healthy offensive unit does?
So I actually just wrote an article about this just because you knew that this conversation was going to come up regardless of who's the quarterback, right? You either have a limited, extremely limited Joe Burrow or a Jake Browning who's never started an NFL game before. Naturally, this is going to be the case. I think it's fine if the Bengals want to run more. I think they have to run better because right now they are 18th in expected points added per rush and 27th in success rate. And that includes the handful of Joe Mixon runs that have gone for more than 10 yards. As long as it's 22, he's had a couple over 10. There needs to be more consistency because what it boils down to is you're running the ball more on first and second down. And the majority of those runs for Joe Mixon have not netted positive results. It's been a lot of 1, 2, 3 yard gains. So it's been more or less similar to not as drastically bad as it was last year, but it's been similar in terms of there's a reason why they're passing the ball in early downs. One, it's just better, it's more efficient. And two, they're just not tremendously good at it. They've had more success moving the chains on like third and short situations, but those situations have been far and few between. They need to run the ball better if they expect it to carry the offense in however way that they need it to. And I think with Jake Browning at quarterback, I'm not here to say that this is like an optimistic take, but this is just a perspective. With Jake Browning, I think you can go under center a little bit more because he's at least mobile. He can move out of the pocket from under center on these play action bootlegs. He can potentially hand the ball off on more wide zone or outside zone concepts, which is crazy because the Bengals completely went away from that last year. And it's interesting how we're talking about it now as a way to salvage what the offense is. But those types of plays, if executed correctly, can open up opportunities down the field for explosive plays, which was the whole point of what the Bengals were trying to do in OTAs and minicamp. They were trying to go under center more. They were trying more play action because that's the best way to open up down the field. It's not going in shotgun and getting the ball out in 2.2 seconds. That doesn't create vacancies and openings in deep coverages. You have to just be very smart and meticulous on how to do that. This is a way to create easier plays, but they have to execute them properly. And we don't know if the Bengals have the running game right now to be able to do that. But I think if Jake Browning is at quarterback, you will probably see more under center. You will definitely see more early down runs in an attempt to get ahead of the chains, not put it all on Browning, but they still have to do it better than they have done in the first 2 weeks.
Well, that's the risk you run. Pardon the pun. When you have a backup quarterback in or a hobbled, limited Burrow in playing for you, is if you do go to more runs, if you do go to that sort of heavy package, you have a potential for it not being successful because you're very predictable at that point. So I think to your point, some more under center, but I do think that you then would do if you have Browning, you would then maybe do some play action bootleg stuff, short, kind of a little short controlled passing as someone kind of trails across the field type of thing. Should they get open? I think if you do a little bit more of that, because otherwise you are truly trying to rely on a Ryan Finley versus the Steelers type of game situation. Where Browning throws the ball. And now you don't want Browning necessarily throwing the ball 40, 50 times either, should he play. But we looked at the stats there. I think Finley in that game was 7 of 13 in that crazy win against the Steelers on Monday night, the Von Bell, Juju Smith-Schuster infamous game. So, you will have to probably rely on a game like that if you want this run heavy type of thing. And I don't know if that plays into your best interest for the Bengals there. But granted, I think Mixon has earned more carries. I think the running backs have in a way, they need a little bit more balance, especially with Burrow ailing a little bit. But I don't know that it necessarily needs to go way over the top on that front, regardless of who's under center.
It's unfortunate because if Burrow plays, I just don't foresee this offense changing that much in terms of what they do schematically, because the emphasis will still be on Burrow getting the ball out quickly. He will not have the mobility that you desire for this offense to run at full functionality. And I think that's part of the equation with what the Bengals coaching staff is thinking of right now. If first of all, there is a greater risk of Burrow suffering an even more severe injury based off of his current status now, that's obviously going to be in the forefront of their minds. And if that risk coincides or is conjoined with if getting another quarterback in there can potentially open up playbook a little bit more, especially against the Rams defense, because Aaron Donald is Aaron Donald, and Jay kind of touched on, some of the other names on the defensive line. This secondary is not that great, and it's not performed particularly well. So there's an opportunity here to, I think, push the ball down the field a little bit more and have some more long developing plays, especially when you have a receiving core that is, I think, is just antsy to get those targets, especially Jamar Chase, who want to go there, right? So I think that's just in their mind right now. And Burrow, in his mind, can probably think that he can do all this stuff, but that's obviously something that he's got to think about as well. I ultimately, Anthony, we talked about Jake Browning in the preseason and how underwhelming he looked, and we kind of chalked that up to he's playing with a backup offensive line, he's playing with backup receivers. We don't really have a good gauge on how good or bad he is when he's playing with second-tier players. If he's out there with the full force of the Bengals offense, with a fully healthy offensive line and receiving core against a Rams defense that, again, it still has Aaron Donald, it can still wreck a game if he so desires, but a Rams defense that is exploitable in some areas, this might be the chance to see what you have with him if you think the risk with Burrow is too much, because I think that's tempting enough to put Browning more on the table, even if Burrow thinks in his heart of hearts he's good to go.
That's a solid point. I mean, Browning and Simeon, they weren't playing with the big three at wideout, and I think very limited. I can't remember exactly how many preseason touches Mixon had, but I think it's few and far between. So I mean, there's an argument to be had that what we saw, which was, I don't know if largely ineffective is the right term, but not the prettiest brand of offensive football with either quarterback that played in the preseason. I think it's fair to say that it would be a decent amount better because of the cast of characters that they would be playing with. So yeah, I mean, that's a fair point. But I mean, obviously the matchups are pretty clear, and I think Jamar Chase this week, he made it known that he wants more deep shots, go routes, that sort of thing. So maybe they try a few more of those this week, especially given the weaknesses or lack of strength in the secondary for the Rams. Maybe that's an area they look to exploit. And of course, figuring out the interior protection against Aaron Donald, that's got to be key. Even though he's at the end of his career there, he still provides massive problems for any offense. So those have to be the keys, John. Any others? And then your prediction for this one.
The Rams running game is still very fascinating to me because they have clarity now that Cam Akers is out the door and Kyron Williams is taking like the full line share, if you will. But I just like Sean McVay, his scheme is like, it's still more or less what it is. Like there's a lot of pre-snap motion. It's a lot of under center. Obviously there's more of a shift towards a more downhill gap scheme and everything, but like it's still in my opinion, a surprisingly effective unit, even though I guess I shouldn't be surprised because like Sean McVay has always typically had a solid run game, and that's been an area of weakness for the Bengals defense, regardless of where the game script is for them. So it's a good opportunity for them, for that unit to kind of take some pride and have a more of a bounce back game against them. But that's going to be, I think, a really even matchup. If the Bengals defensive line plays up to their potential against a pretty solid Rams running run defense, that's going to be an underrated aspect of this game, I think, because there's bigger storylines everywhere else. I'm not going to be I can't in good conscience predict the Bengals winning with Jake Browning at quarterback, especially because if Matthew Stafford wasn't playing too well, like maybe I would change it, but it does come down to the quarterbacks for me. He could definitely surprise. Like if this ends up being Ryan Finley 2.0, like it's not going to be the most shocking thing I've ever seen. It's 2023. There's plenty more shocking things that I've seen. But yeah, like it's the Bengals would have to just play just really, really great football to win with Jake Browning a quarterback, even if
Around
the Rams defense is not. Yeah, it's going to be tough. So I'm going to have the Rams winning this one by like 4 points, 6 points.
And if Burrow plays,
oof, that's even tougher. I just it's if he didn't get hit, if he didn't get injured, you would think that this is just 2022 again, right? They made strides on offense in week 2, and then they kind of started putting it together in week 3 for a more solid performance. I just not sure that we're gonna get that even if he does play, man. Like there's a scenario where Aaron Donald just pressures him out, and maybe he tweaks it again, or maybe he's just mindful of that, and he's just getting the ball out even quicker. And if that's the case, like I agree with Jake, I don't foresee the Bengals skill players breaking off long catches and runs after the catch if the ball's just getting out too quick. And the Rams obviously have a lot of tape on that. So I think the only way the Bengals win this game is if Joe Burrow just plays out of his mind while injured, or the Bengals just completely rally around Jake Browning. I would like to see either of them happen before I actually predict it to happen.
Yeah, this is such a hard game to predict. Again, I'm kind of operating under the assumption that Burrow will play, and maybe I'm in the minority that thinks that, but I'm just operating under that assumption. And with that, I think the Bengals squeak out a victory here. If it goes the other way and it is Browning, I don't think they win this game. And then, I don't know what the conversation is if they go 0-3. I don't know exactly what the game plan is, what the direction is. If they expect maybe a week of sitting with Burrow kind of remedies it, and then they go just 1 week. This is a really, really tough. I don't mean to be fence rider or whatever about it. It's just really, really tough to call when you don't know who's playing at quarterback and how healthy said quarterback truly is in this one. So as of now, I'm operating under the assumption that Burrow will play and the Bengals get a tough, probably ugly, close victory, but we'll see exactly what happens. We're about an hour in. Let's drop the mic and get out of here, John. What do you have for us?
An ugly win now would be so beautiful, I think, to a lot of Bengals fans, because that's the whole thing, right? Like, winning ugly is all the Bengals can hope to do in September nowadays. The fact that they just can't seem to do that despite the adversity is the biggest reason as to why they're just being held back in the regular season. But I want to reject kind of the notion that you brought it up like fence riding, and I know that's not what you want, like that's not what you want to be associated with. But I reject the idea of like that actually exists in terms of just analysis. Like, we're just calling it like we see it, right? This is not the same as the Bengals starting 0-2 last year, when you have a group of, when you have an offense that doesn't really know what it is, but they're going to eventually figure it out because there's veteran leadership. This is an offense without a quarterback right now, an offense without a fully healthy quarterback, and you just don't know what that entails. You don't know what the long-term or short-term future is with the group if that is such an unknown. So we're like, this is just calling it like it is. And there's not a ton of, rightfully so, there's not a ton of optimism right now, because you just don't know if he's going to play. You don't know what his status is. You don't know if this is going to continue for the rest of the year. You can kind of assume that that's going to be the case, but until they show that this is just something that they can just pull out of their butts, and by the magic of locker room culture, I think it's just up to them to kind of prove that, and not up to us to be like, hey, we just assume it's going to happen because why not?
Yeah. Well, I guess coin flip situation. I don't know. With who's playing, how healthy, all that kind of stuff. Elise asked this funny question in here. Anthony, did you play for the Bengals offensive line? I don't know if that's a compliment, not a compliment, what have you.
I don't even know that's a compliment.
I wanted to show this picture once again, and if you joined us for the aftermath on Monday, I shared this is Jason, and I've enlarged this a little bit. If you look, I don't know if you see my cursor moving up there, but if you look at this Cincy Jungle shirt, it's got kind of some random signatures on it. That was from well over a decade ago when I was attending I was at a San Diego Chargers game with the Bengals, and one of the signatures up top here is Mike Brown. and I met Mike Brown, and this comment reminded me of this. And Mike Brown, very affable guy, and very low key guy, comes strolling into this hotel, and I just kind of went up to him a little bit because he was allowing people to go up to him, and introduced myself. And he said, it just gave him some compliments because at the time they were kind of stringing together winning seasons and everything like that. And Mike Brown, in his very unique verbiage, says to me, he goes, so you're a pretty big guy. Did you play? And I said, oh yeah, here and there. And I was more baseball, blah, blah, blah. He said, oh, well, you're husky was the word he used for me. And that always stuck with me because I'm like, I don't think husky's not normally used as a complimentary term. But I guess the fact that he thought that I was at some point some sort of player, I guess, I don't know. I guess I would take that as a compliment in some Mike Brown way, right?
Yeah, I can see him like learning that just from his dad, maybe. Just talking specifically in like football terms, like, oh yeah, you're a pretty husky dude. You can get dirty in the trenches. Thanks, man. I'm just a normal dude, just trying to live life. Thanks.
But regardless, I kind of just thought it was funny when he said it. But I maintain to this day, I know people have said what they've said about Mike Brown over the years and continue to say about him, but he was nothing but affable and approachable and very, very nice, not only to myself, but to others that were going up to him that day. So I will maintain that stance at least. Anyway, funny story. I saw that comment from Elise and I'm like, I gotta tell that story, even if it puts a little egg on my face, but whatever. Anyway, John, thank you, buddy. Thanks for hopping on. I know it's been a crazy day, but especially with that news that broke right before we took the air. But thank you, and thank you all to everybody tuning in live, everybody tuning in after the fact. Get it on your favorite audio streamer, this show, and others on the Cincy Jungle podcast channel. Subscribe to our YouTube channel below John there. And, of course, you got to like the Cincy Jungle Facebook page. Keep it to cincyjungle.com and ADZsports.com. Let's hope for that ever elusive W for the Cincinnati Bengals on this one, because they need to start turning things around and Burrow needs to get healthy. John, have a good kickoff to your weekend, bud.
Yeah, and if you guys are down at the game, I'll be there. So feel free to say hi.
Say hey. All right.